So thanks, guys, obviously, for taking the time to obviously come and join me today. I wanted to just do like a bit of an intro, first of all, just about like the company that I'm running, Invigorate Spaces. So basically, the vision of the company that I've set up is to breathe much needed life into the corporate world. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way as me, but I feel like the corporate world is like this wheel that you're in. And sometimes there's not space for like being human and just being you. And so I wanted to try to change that by creating this business. My mission is to basically normalize wellness and to change the narrative to make sure that both employers and employees know that it's essential for performance. And this is obviously what this session is all about. As I mentioned, it's interactive. So shout whenever you want to ask any questions or whatever. And the strength of the session is based on what you guys think as well. So two-way communication is like top notch if you're up for it, that is. So agenda today, obviously, I'm just going to introduce myself, tell you a bit about my background, and then obviously ask you guys, what do you want to get out of the session? Talk about the reality of life as an entrepreneur and like what it actually is like in terms of your wellness and how it can be impacted. And then we're going to go to the races. So I don't know if you guys are all familiar with horse racing, but we're going to talk a bit about horse racing and I'm going to ask you guys' opinion on it. And then at the end, I love to kind of get some action. So I would love at the end of this session for you guys to be like, actually, this has been really, really good. And I've taken something away from it and I've made changes. So does that sound good to everyone? Yeah, cool. All right, I've got some chat going on here. So I'm just going to have a little look. Ooh. Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. So this is me. So background, basically, I used to, my main corporate career has been in serviced offices. And then over the last 8 years, I landed up as director at Nike and then decided that I basically wanted to make a bit of a shift and do more full-time wellness, which is why obviously Invigorate Spaces was born. Let me just go. So this is kind of like the state of play at the moment, and it's a little bit scary. I'm sure that this is an alarming statistic, but basically 72% of entrepreneurs are affected by mental health issues. And if you compare that, sorry, I can't move my chat out of the way. Let me just see if I can grab it. Yeah, so if you compare that to obviously non-entrepreneurs, it's completely different. And that's a really scary statistics. And so whilst I think that these are, I should say these are American statistics as well. But if you compare like the fact that you guys are all entrepreneurs, you are actually more at risk just by being an entrepreneur. So I don't know, how do you guys resonate with this? Do you feel like it's difficult being an entrepreneur in terms of your wellness?
Does anyone else want to go first, or should I chip straight in?
You chip straight in.
So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think being an entrepreneur is such a lonely place, so I have a coffee company. We have about 7 employees, and you know, it's apart from the kind of pressures that come with investors and other directors, it can just be such a mentally challenging space. And I think with what I'm finding particularly difficult at the moment with social media is you see a LinkedIn post of, for me, like another food and drink brand or another coffee brand who are doing more sales than you or have achieved the next greater thing in the category. And I find it particularly hard with that world of social media to really get away from that and find like decent headspace and forget what achievements that we've achieved as a company. So I think there's a little bit both there of indirect and direct mental health, because there's nothing I could do to change, you know, other people shouting and celebrating on LinkedIn. But yeah, I completely resonate with that.
Okay. And some of the things you've touched on there, we're going to go through later on and hopefully get some coping mechanisms in place to kind of avoid that comparison thing. So hopefully we can touch a bit on some of those things that you've mentioned. Anyone else want to say anything around that? All good.
I think James is bang on, to be honest, because I think the more you level up your business, the more network you grow and the more essentially people you put on pedestals. So whether your achievements are always much smaller than whoever you can see, in the eyes of yourself anyway. So I think the statistic of 72% of entrepreneurs are directly impacted by mental health. I'm surprised that's not higher, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because you are thrown out to swim, and it is kind of swim or don't get paid, which does come with a lot of obviously mental health impact. So it'd be interesting to see how this develops, really.
Yeah. And obviously I keep saying Squid, Ben, I'm going to say, says he's not an entrepreneur, but obviously totally can see where the mental pitfalls could be along the way. So it's one of those things that if you're not actually consciously aware of these things, I think it's very hard to have a coping mechanism if you don't even consider that it could be a problem. So it's really good, even though this is alarming, it's good to like bring it to the front just to level set where we are. If you look at societal norms, society as a whole is all about you can have everything, you can go out and you can achieve everything, and you know everything is achievable and then nothing comes at any cost. And one of the things that I think is a challenge with that is you can feel completely overwhelmed. So the lady there in the top left, she's getting like all the interactions from different people. She doesn't know where to turn and she's just feeling completely like disorientated by everything. You've also got the landscape of technology and how that's constantly, you know, it might be social media posts, which obviously you've mentioned there, James, or it could be, I don't know, your friends saying, how's your business going? And obviously from their perspective, they're just trying to be nice and supporting you as a business. But sometimes if it's not going so great, that can be another kind of like anxiety inducing moment. And then also, obviously, you've got that whole thing, which again, James touched on, that isolation. So lady up there, top right, you know, just feeling completely isolated basically and alone. I'm just going to try and admit, sorry. Oh, I don't know how I get there. I can't actually get to my buttons to admit this other person, which is a bit annoying, but anyway, we'll have to carry on. So there's all these things that are going on that obviously can cause you to be anxious. And one of the things of this presentation that I obviously want to do is to try to unlock all of these kind of wellness challenges and turn them instead into positives. And so just for a moment, we're going to kind of have a bit of a brainstorm around going to the races. And I know this seems like on a tangent, but basically it'll come to light after when we start thinking about this, why this is so important. So if you imagine for one moment that you own a racehorse, you've invested a heavy amount of money into this racehorse, and you want to make sure that obviously you get the best outcome possible from this racehorse, i.e., running the best races that it can run and crossing that finish line first. Have a consideration just for a quick moment around the things that you would want to implement to make sure that that racehorse had the best opportunity to win. So think about, do you need to get a trainer? What are you going to feed that horse, etc.?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to, I'm actually not a horse racing kind of guy, unfortunately, but can definitely see the similarities. I think just having a core foundation in place, but even before starting a business, I wish you could just have that core foundation of like for me, routine is so important, and having perhaps a jockey and a trainer who are in sync with each other's routines, if that makes sense. And I guess applying it to the world of business, that jockey could be the founder, and the trainer could be an advisor or maybe an investor of significant importance. And then like you touched on there, Bex, the nutrition is such an important side, but yeah, I don't really know what else to add on there.
No problem. Those are really great ideas. Just anyone else got anything they want to add on to that? I'm laughing here because Squid's put in the chat, I don't know if you've seen this, that he's going to feed the horse coffee, junk food, and social media addiction. I don't think that's going to be positive, hey? Anything from you, Tove? Probably not. Okay, so basically in summary, if you imagine if you wanted this horse to perform at its best, you'd need to think about every single thing that that horse is doing. So for example, basically what food is that horse going to be eating, making sure it's the best available food that the horse can eat. How are they going to actually be sleeping at night? So what does the shed that they stay in at night, or the stables where they stay, how is that in terms of allowing them for rest and recovery? What does the trainer look like? How does the trainer support the person? So for example, if we think about like making sure that that horse can run as fast as it can, it needs to obviously have the best trainer and the best availability of trainer and vet, etc. Thinking about things like during the race, you might not understand this in terms of race horsing, but sometimes they have blinkers, which are basically to stop them looking at other horses so that they can just focus on their own race. Other things that you might want to consider is other horses. If the horse is by itself, it could be lonely. And if it shares its time with other horses, it'll feel more part of a pack and obviously therefore be able to perform better as well. So if I was to say to you, factor in all these things in, also, of course, water is so important for the horse as well. If I was to factor all of these things in and say to you guys that you are the horse, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say you are in terms of looking after yourself and allowing yourself to perform like a racehorse?
I would say probably a 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I think it's only when people highlight some of the unhealthy lifestyles that entrepreneurs can lead that you then realize that you should be more of a 8, 9, and 10. Someone an investor about 3 or 4 weeks ago said something super powerful, and that it was, if a founder can't do his job between a 9 to 5, then the business or the founder is doing something wrong. And it's totally true, right? If the business should maybe hire another employee to take some of that load, or you need to just manage that. So yeah, I totally agree. It's very hard to have that holistic approach to seeing what you are out of 10, and like taking time out to review what you really are, and what points of your lifestyle need to be improved. It's super difficult.
Yeah, no, and to be honest, I echo all of these sentiments. And I think if we look at the scores across the board, everyone's sort of saying a 6, and then Squid is saying maybe he's even worse than that. And when you factor in the landscape of the fact that we are, as entrepreneurs, more susceptible to mental health issues or wellness issues, it's even more prevalent and pressing that we do prioritize it and we focus on it. There's comments that are made sometimes, which I did want to touch on, around how, if you love what you're doing, you should be able to work 24/7. And I think some of this messaging is, to be fair, not the most productive, because everybody needs to rest. If you consider a marathon runner and the preparation that goes into running a marathon as an example, you would never run a marathon the day before that main race. You would always taper off to make sure that you had energy in the tank and you were ready to go to be able to unleash the best version of yourself on that race day. And being an entrepreneur is exactly the same. If you consistently try to work hours and hours and hours, everything becomes jumbled. I know that from experience. I've tried to, be everything to everybody, and it doesn't really work out right. But a couple of things that I've done throughout my life that have now put me in a stronger position is prioritizing my wellness. And by that, I mean, ideas as an example. My ideas become so much more prevalent to me when I'm in the shower, or I'm going for a walk, or I'm doing something not work related. And yet sometimes I could sit at my desk and sit there for hours and an idea won't come. So it's just about trying to change your mindset to say, look, wellness is actually super important, but more than that, it will actually make you perform better. And so if we think of it through that sporting lens, it's so important that we prioritize it and don't put it to the bottom of our to-do list. But the only way that we can prioritize it is actually planning it into our days and being mindful that it is going to help us perform. So when we stop and we come away from emails for an hour, it doesn't mean we're missing anything. we're just focusing on something completely different, and then we'll be fresh by the time we come back to it. How does that resonate in terms of that discussion?
Yeah, I can actually relate to that almost on an exact, almost exactly. Bex, last quarter, Q4 for us was complete hell, and it was just like we were all in the trenches, like 24/7, and I was working stupid hours, and we just weren't seeing the growth or some of the deliverables. And we put in some really strict kind of wellness measures in Q1, and of like, you know, if just the team being really open and vocal if they're feeling tired, for example. You hit a month's KPIs, then you get a day off, for example, and like actually finishing at 6 every day. And this quarter has just been transformational for the whole business. You know, everyone's got a bit of momentum, everyone's got a bit more oomph. Sleep is so important. So yeah, I can completely resonate with that. And any entrepreneur starting their journey, you just cannot value wellness kind of as a kind of core pillar of the business.
Fantastic. God, that's amazing. So you can see tangibly that your profits have increased really as a result of focusing in on well-being.
In Q4 we grew 8% on Q3, and in Q1 we're about 38% up on Q4.
Wow.
So and Q4 is our busiest period of the year. So it's been transformational that you know, everyone is a bit more, I think, just happier in themselves.
Incredible. What about everyone else? How do they feel about that? I'm putting you all on the spot, so I don't know if you want to chat or not.
That's all right. I'm basically just cutting in between the washing machine, going through full blast at this point. I think for me, it's I do prioritize sort of that section of my life. Like, I have a big health routine, but the whole, I guess, entrepreneurial split, when I was employed and I was running stores for other people, it was much easier, because whether the company floated well or was in a good or bad place, realistically your wage is still there. You're not in control of, say, other people's resources, their own families. So I think, and from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's hard to, say, commit to use the gym, for example, when, I don't know, you're on the edge of, say, a 6 or 7 figure deal. Everything you're trying to do, every minute you put in, is just to try and get that over the edge. When things are going really well, you want to keep momentum, it's exciting, so you still don't prioritize it because you're trying to ride the wave. But then if they're not going well, it's like, I can't justify, you know, taking a couple hours out of my day to do some meal prep, when in reality, you know, Subway is going to cut like 2 hours off my week by doing that. And you know, there's higher resources. So I think there's a middle ground where wellness really takes place for me, but either side of the spectrum is where it kind of goes really out the window.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're in a stuck situation, like abandoned ship, even though in reality that's basically the best time you should be activating these habits and skills. But the pressure of financial either gain or loss is kind of the breakthrough of, well, is that the best use of time?
Yeah, no, 100%. So if I was to say to you, if you start to consider wellness like a vitamin pill that you take every day, that is the best approach. Not every day you're going to get it right, but you're going to at least take a vitamin. You're going to at least do 1 or 2 things that are going to be okay, to avoid having to take the paracetamol or tip yourself over the edge effectively.
Yeah.
Because I think the challenge that comes is, and I know it all well myself, the last couple of weeks I've been incredibly busy and I've had to push wellness a bit to the side, and as a result of that I've not been feeling probably at my best self. Whereas this morning I got up committed to actually, you know, leading by example and doing what I say that I would do. So I went to the gym, I've ate right, I've drunk water, I've done all those basics, and I feel so much better today. And I know that I'm showing up better. And I know that as a result of that, I'm doing better work. So it is a balancing act. You're never going to always get it right, but it's just having that in your mind. And also like considering, once you focus all of these things in, what your life could be like, because obviously most of us have got commitments outside of the entrepreneurial life that we've decided to go down. And we chose those, but our loved ones and our relationships didn't choose that. And so how do we make sure that you know, the business is running, but it's locked away somewhere at some point. So you have that quality time with people, so you can show up authentically, have lovely relationships with your, you know, special family or friends or relationships or whatever, and actually like spend time with friends and family and do these active things. It's really hard, right? But it's about being mindful of the fact that the decision to go into the entrepreneurial life was yours. It wasn't your immediate family's decision. And I think sometimes for me, that's something I have to keep reminding myself of, because I'm super passionate about this dream, but no one else is, right? Because it's just my dream. That's the thing. So I have to kind of like balance all of that. And I wanted to kind of just go through the wellness wheel. I promised that at the start. When people talk about wellness, they always say mental health, and it's fantastic that people always talk about mental health first, but there's actually a whole wheel of things that you need to factor in when you consider wellness. If we think about your mind, it's basically obviously the rest and recovery, personal boundaries, and everything that goes with it in terms of mindset. When you think about your body, it's not just nutrition, it's fueling your body correctly in terms of water, it's movement, any movement. Walking rather than taking the escalators on the tube, as an example, is like a great way to get some movement into your day. Thinking about your soul as well is another thing. It's a very deep part of it, but you know, what's your purpose? Why are you on this earth, and what do you want to do? All of these things give us a feeling of being well when we line up with those and get like proper fulfillment in our jobs. And then when we think about the benefits, like Tobias, you mentioned already about not knowing where that next paycheck is coming from is stressful, right? So it's sometimes it's easier to consider, do you need a part-time job to allow you to have a bit more freedom? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think for me personally, when I started out on this journey, I was always like, I can't do it. That's admitting defeat. But actually just getting a couple of days work with somebody that's a regular thing, or a day, it gives you like more ease and more relaxed way into this entrepreneurial world. The other thing is community. So like the feeling of giving back obviously makes you feel better, right? Like when you do something that's good for other people, it makes you feel better, and therefore you become more well as a result. And then the last part of the wheel is, where do you work? So like for me, I work on my dining room table at home. It's not ideal, you know. Ideally you'd want a monitor, you'd want like a proper desk, etc. So again, it's just all of these things here are just considerations to kind of like get you guys thinking, like, if you were to look at this wheel, how much of this are you doing in order to set yourself up for the best success? So I don't know if anyone feels open to share. You don't need to, but is there anything glaring on that wheel that you think, God, I didn't realize that? Oh, look.
I think for me, it's managing it all at once. Like you say, it's like taking a vitamin pill. So if you were to, I don't know, put something in each of those categories, you're working towards, you know, a certain workplace, you're putting in, say, 9 hours sleep. Well, I think it's between 7 and 9 is recommended, isn't it? So your nutrition can, if you're going to do that right to start with, you're looking at a couple hours a day to prep all of that. And everything stacks up, and you then are either taking time resource from working, or you're taking time resource and spending it with family and friends. So I think every time I've tried to attack wellness from that aspect, I've seen the full wheel and just gone, I've not got enough time to activate all this, so what's the point in doing any of it? Which is a naive way of looking at it, but still it has that profound effect.
Yeah. And the purpose of me showing you this wheel, I should say, is not to go, oh my God, alarm bells, I need to be doing all of this thing and adding more drama to your lives. You know what I mean? It is just to say that actually the wellness wheel is specific to each individual. So there might be something on there that you could go after today that is achievable, that really transforms the way you feel every day in order to perform at your best in terms of wellness. And so when I say like, we're going to create an action plan, I'm just going to get you to think about what is there one thing on there today that you could go like, if I tackle that, I could be feeling completely different tomorrow, as an example. And then how are we going to make sure that that's achievable? So it's not moving you from nowhere to here. It's just making a few commitments that will make you feel better. I'm just reading Ben's comment here. He's saying it feels like we play this weird game of professionalism and uptightedness in the entrepreneurial and professional world. You don't want to break the mold by being too vulnerable, or for that matter, trying to dig deeper in other people. And it's so funny that this is here, because being truthful, this is one of the reasons why I decided to leave like the corporate world, really, is that I wanted to show up authentically as me. I wanted to be vulnerable. I wanted to be able to not have this kind of like idea of me, if that makes sense. And I only got to the age of like, I'm 41 now, and I got to that age where I was like, I'm ready to be me, and I don't care about the consequences of that. But I can't say hand on heart that I ever felt like that when I was in my 20s. I always felt like I wanted to get up the corporate ladder. I was being very pleasant and nice to everybody, and I wasn't really being myself. There was things that I would let go that I wasn't so happy about sharing, that wasn't great. Do you know what I mean? But over time, I've realized that to really be happy, you do need to be yourself every day. And how you find that is up to you. But I think if people don't appreciate you as you, then you're in the wrong place, effectively. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Agreed.
Anything from you, James, here?
No, I think Tobias not hit the nail on the head. It's looking at that wheel, even just looking at that really briefly, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed of like, okay, there's so much to focus on within the world of wellness, and you know, where do you start? And again, you could probably devote half a day or even a day to like writing kind of personal KPIs, I guess, of how you're going to hit all of those points. I think the main thing is just being aware of what part of that wheel you are lacking, and kind of almost going for the low-hanging fruit, and getting some momentum with trying to improve your own mental wellness.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the main tips that I wanted to give you guys today to avoid this feeling of potentially being overwhelmed by this wheel is, I asked you today, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your wellness? And you guys all gave me obviously a score. If I can give you one tip, when you start your day, that's what you should be saying to yourself before you do anything else. How am I feeling today on a wellness scale, 1 to 10? And if you're at 2 that particular day, it's almost like a discussion with yourself to say, actually, I'm going to go a bit easy on myself today. And I'm not in a position where I'm like available for everyone, or where, you know, I'm going to be moving mountains in my business. I'm just going to be keeping things ticking over. And if you wake up the next day and your score is like 10, that's when you go and attack everything that's in your path and really like capitalize on that feeling of like, I'm strong today, I know what I'm doing, I'm going for it kind of thing. And that is probably my best tip that I can give you. It's not about being overwhelmed by this. It's just about acknowledging where you are and what do you need that day to make yourself feel well. If you never check in with yourself, you'll just go through life probably stressed or whatever, not even acknowledging that and not being able to notice what causes you to feel like that. So again, when you start to log, like, I feel a 6 today. Okay, what did I do yesterday that's made me feel like a 6 today? And what can I do today to move me a bit further? And you start to notice trends. So from my personal experience, if I go to the gym in the morning, no word of a lie, I could be entering that gym at 4, and by the time I come out, I'm at an 8, 9 every time. So the first thing I know from myself that I need to do is basically say, I have to go to the gym every day. It's my one non-negotiable, because otherwise I know that I'm not going to feel the same. You know, and if you can narrow it down to that one thing that really just shifts you from stressed to like great, then you've really got a situation where you can control your wellness, basically. So last sort of slide here is just around action plans. So I've got a little picture here of me with my next door neighbor's dog. It's not my dog, by the way, but this is another thing that I do. I borrow the dog from next door when I need a bit of like animal interaction and love from an animal. So there you go. So that's another little top tip. But I just wanted you guys to think about an action plan that you could create to move yourselves from like the 6s and the below numbers that you spoke about today, more towards like the 9s and 10s. Is there anything that you could consider doing? And these are just some examples. So for your mind, you could start to journal. So you could start to gratitude journal in the morning, which is something that's shown to be really really empowering and a positive thing to do. The easiest thing you can do is drink more water. It's unbelievable, but you're basically supposed to drink 2 liters of water a day as a minimum. And if you actually consider that, has anyone drunk 2 liters of water today? It's mad, right? If you think about isolation and feeling lonely, like, who is that friend or that group of friends that lifts you up? And do you need to spend more time making sure that you do connect with them to kind of restore your wellness? Like I mentioned earlier on about the finance piece, like if that's a worry and you know it's causing you stress, get a little part-time job to substantiate your entrepreneurial life. You're in this for the long game, right? Not the short game. So it doesn't matter about just saying, I'm going to take a couple of days from this company to support everything else. And then in terms of community, this is a big one for me. I love giving back. And I feel a real sense of satisfaction when I give back. So it might be a silly example here, but this is something that I do, like helping in a charity shop. So it might be doing something random like that. And again, when you're on your entrepreneurial starting point, this isn't going to be a possibility. So, you know, your time is important, right? Like you're probably not going to have extra time to give to people in that way, but it might be a financial donation, or it could be something else that you could be doing. And then in terms of workplace, like really think about your current setup. Does it support you ergonomically to work at your best? Have you got a monitor? Have you got a desk, etc.? And how could that environment being changed support you better when it comes to wellness? So that is basically the summary of everything. I don't know if anyone feels comfortable to kind of like share if there's one thing that they're going to do as a result of today's session going forward.
I think just that's a really point that's resonated with me, Bex, is the finding that one daily driver that can take you from a 4 to a 9. You've got that formula, then everything else kind of builds around it. I guess the challenge is finding what that thing is. That and the water thing, that no one drinks 2 liters a day. Yeah, there are probably 2 takeaways for me. Thank you very much.
No, absolute pleasure. And I think as well, like the big thing that I've realized doing wellness and obviously being a qualified PT as well, is that people always say, right, in the industry, you need to do this, you should be at this gym, you should be doing this or that. The basics are basics and they don't cost anything. Water, like, you know, most people have got a tap in their house, right? Like it's completely free. And yet it's something we choose not to use. Same when it comes to sleep. Sleep is probably one of the most underutilized resources that we have. It's crazy, right? Like, and again, entrepreneurs will always say to you, successful entrepreneurs will always say, oh, you can power through on 4 hours, like power through. No, you can't. Like 8 hours is what you should be having just to restore yourself. And you know what it's like when you've managed to have a beautiful night's sleep, you do wake up in a completely different mindset, don't you? So yeah, anything from you, Tobias? I'm looking at you.
I think it's you are totally right. Those resources are phenomenal. I think the way I always see it, if it's time spent in one area, it's time not spent in another. I think that's where I do run into limitations and I guess distractions. But you are right. I do have a few staple things. So I'm a big runner. So if I don't run at least once in a couple of days, I become an absolute, excuse the language, knob. Like I'm a knob. Everyone at the team will tell me, like, it's that go to. If I'm being that guy, they'll just tell me to take an hour and go away. And I do come back from a 4 to a 9 quite easily. My partner will say the same thing. So there are definitely key things. I am a bit of one of those people who will do 4 hours of sleep for a series of 7 or 8 days to get, say, a project over the line or something like that. But then as soon as that week is done, then I will take another week off to recoup and put myself back in the same frame of mind. But I'm also lucky that I do have a team of people who will look after my company when I'm not there. And I can't say that's been something that I've prioritized over the last 4 or 5 years of having that company. That is something I've had to work to get to that place. So I definitely understand those who are going into the entrepreneurial world where they don't feel like they can prioritize 9 hours of sleep and then exercise and then do this. But it is maybe just finding that one trigger that does take you even from a 4 to a 6. It just gets you to the next little blip which allows you to build that momentum and snowball. The fitness was always the one for me. Like, I couldn't commit to the water or the food or the sleep until I had the trigger, and I knew if I wanted to keep running, I knew I had to keep sleeping, and if I keep sleeping, I had to have a water. And that's that. If as soon as I stopped my running, all the rest of them stopped. So as long as I keep that one going, I know I'm being in a good place.
That's amazing.
Finding that trigger is the best way.
Yeah, and it's so true what you say around, there are going to be periods where your work is intense, especially as an entrepreneur, where you like are running, you know, like full pelt at everything you're doing, but you need to take your foot off the gas and make sure you have that time to decompress. And again, some of the things that you hear a lot through entrepreneurs is, you know, I carry on working when I'm on holiday or whatever. Like these type of things, I think you really need to work hard on your boundaries when you're an entrepreneur, to know when you're working, and when you're resting, because every single moment when you're an entrepreneur is actually more important. And that sounds dramatic, but you've only got 8 hours in the day, let's say, if that's going to be your working hours. And so how you use them is super important, and making sure they're intentional is even more important, right? So the social media bleeps that come in all the time, even our Discord channel sometimes is like, it's intense, right? So shutting those things down to allow you to focus on one task at a time and being really intentional. I think Nicoletta's session the other day as well around accountability and being intentional is so true, because all of this supports your wellness. So before I finish up, I was just going to show you here. This is just an overview in case it isn't of handy to anyone that you know. These are kind of what I do as a business. So I do workplace strategy, environments experiences, and also wellness. And I do these kind of workshops and training, and also the one-to-one PT coaching. So I just thought I'd whack that up whilst you're all here. And that's it really. Just like a huge thanks for obviously coming. And if there's any questions or anything before we end, like I'm open to take questions. We've got like 4 minutes. If there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
No questions from me, Bex. Thank you very much for your time. I've connected. I've just sent a connection request on LinkedIn, so we can pick up comms. I'd love to potentially have you to speak to the team or do some wellness coaching. That'd be great.
Okay, fantastic, great. No questions from Squid. Tobias, you all good?
I think if you were going to give, last question, if you're going to give, I guess, one piece of advice, you did mention some bits earlier, one piece of advice to maybe someone who is a solo entrepreneur, they're 6 months in, and they've got Gary Vee on one corner and Tim Ferriss on the other. One is telling them to grind, and one's telling them to give up everything and just meditate and sit in a sauna for the best part of 72 hours. Where is the middle ground for them? I mean, both very, very successful people in their own right, two completely different careers, but who should they value the opinion of? Where is the best place to go?
No, I'm with you. Do you know what? It's a great question. I think it goes back to your value set is the most important thing. So as an example, I'm around coming up for the 6 month mark, even with my business. And obviously I'm a solo entrepreneur. I feel like at the moment, the balance is over here. Like what I set out to achieve in terms of my business was great. All of it was like, I want to do well. I want to be financially viable. I want to have well-being. I want personal time, etc. And if we were think of like, this is my perfect, I'm here, which is like too busy. Do you know what I mean? And I need to kind of bring it back a little bit to reset. And I'm conscious of that. But I also am conscious of the fact that I need to make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. But I don't want to sustain where I am for longer than the next couple of months. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just trying to go back to the reason you started this entrepreneurial journey, and that will guide you as to which person you follow. But I do think that it's not like you're always over here. I think it's like everything's always like this, you know, like one moment you're everything's in control, the next minute you're over here, and it's just trying to always bring it back to the middle, I think, you know what I mean? And taking the advice from people that you look at and think, I want to be that person. You know what I mean? Like really deciding if the advice that you're getting is from somebody that you would like to be like.
Yeah, I think that is a great way of looking at it, because like you say, if you have got the Gary Vee's of the world and you look at their life, they are still going, you know, a million miles an hour, and some people just don't want that lifestyle.
Yeah,
they do want the Tim Ferriss look. So at the end of the day, you know, listening to the advice of someone who is doing something in a career path that you don't have any dream to aspire to is doesn't make much sense when you break it down.
No, exactly. And, you know, like some people, their value set is driven by the monetary gain. That makes your decision-making process very different. And that isn't a driver for me. I hope it's something that will come as a result of the amazing business that I operate in, but it isn't the reason why I'm doing this. And I think then that drives how you show up every day and what you do, and like, you know, how you come across effectively. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's tough. I don't think there's definitely not one rule fits all. That's as easy as it is to explain.
I think you're totally right. I would want to pick up with you at some point. Generally, I guess about wellness for leadership. So say, sorry if you've got. See you later, James. If you've got to go.
Bye, James.
We were, yeah, just because I mean, you were talking about obviously being transparent around your own team and things like that. But then you obviously, if you are in, say, financial struggles and the whole team, is not necessarily a great time to show weakness. It's not a great time to have that conversation. You do need to be leading from the front. So it would be nice to have some sort of session or some sort of brainstorm just about wellness for leadership and sort of those particular roles. Because you are right, and obviously when you left the corporate career, I did the same thing because I wasn't being myself in that area. My family, my friends all told me that I wasn't the same person wearing those colours. So I think finding a middle ground in your own team and your own company is also a good place to be, because at the end of the day, you can't be walking around like an absolute stress monster 24/7, even though internally that may be a stage that the business is going through.
Yeah, no, and it's good that you said about another conversation, because that's a huge topic, isn't it, to try to navigate. And it depends in the context of the landscape of like where you are with that financial difficulty. Do you know what I mean? Because to some people, it could just be a blip that can be overcome. It's not worth mentioning it or even raising it. But I think it's like having a close network around you that you can vent that to. Do you know what I mean? Rather than your own employees or whatever that might be. So yeah, definitely we can catch up offline on that one.